The light you see from a distant star may have begun its journey millions of years ago. When you look at it, you are literally seeing the past. That star may no longer exist, yet its light has only just arrived. Something strangely similar happens inside your life. You have a breakthrough moment, a realization, an insight that instantly changes how you see yourself. Inside, everything feels different. But outside, your job looks the same. Your relationships feel unchanged. Your finances haven't moved. And the question quietly appears, if I've changed, why hasn't reality changed yet? This is what we might call the consciousness lag paradox, the mysterious gap between inner transformation and outer results. Today, we'll explore why this gap exists through classical physics, neuroscience, and even the strange possibilities suggested by quantum theory. And more importantly, how to shorten the distance between awareness and reality. You've surely experienced this feeling. You've just finished a life-changing book. You've attended a course, a meditation session, and felt a profound inner transformation. You suddenly realize a limiting belief that has held you back for so long, and you decide to let it go. In that moment, you feel light, free, and full of energy. You tell yourself, from now on, everything will be different. Your consciousness has made a quantum leap. It doesn't need to go through intermediate steps. It instantly shifts from state A, the old you, to state B, the new you. You feel this change clearly. You think differently, feel differently, and see the world through a completely new lens. But then, a week goes by. A month goes by. You look around. The job is still boring. The stressful relationship is still the same. Your financial situation hasn't improved. The mirror still reflects a familiar image. And you start to wonder, was that moment of enlightenment real? Or was I just deluding myself? This feeling of being out of sync, this discrepancy between the speed of consciousness and the speed of reality, is the source of frustration, doubt, and sometimes giving up. We feel like we're shouting into a void. I've changed. But the universe seems to respond with a heart-wrenching silence. This is not your fault, nor is it a sign that your change isn't real. It is a fundamental law that we can understand by looking at two parallel worlds that coexist: the physical world of inertia and the conscious world of infinite possibilities. To understand this lag, we must first understand the nature of the prison of reality we live in. A prison built not of iron bars, but of something far more solid: inertia. Imagine your physical reality, your body, job, relationships, living environment, as a giant supertanker weighing hundreds of thousands of tons, moving across the ocean. And your consciousness, your decision to change, is the rudder of that ship. When you decide to change course, you have turned the rudder. It is a decisive and instantaneous action. But what happens next? Does the ship immediately turn 90 degrees? Certainly not. Due to its immense mass and momentum, the ship will continue to drift in its old direction for a long distance. It will only begin to change course gradually, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. It takes a considerable amount of time and a very long distance before an observer can clearly see that the ship has truly changed its course. That is Newton's law of inertia in action in the real world. Every object tends to resist changes in its state of motion. The more mass an object has, the stronger its inertia, and the more energy and time it requires to change its trajectory. Our physical reality operates in exactly the same way. Your body has biological inertia. It's made of trillions of cells accustomed to old biochemical patterns, governed by years of habits in eating, sleeping, and exercise. When you decide to live healthier, your consciousness changes instantly. But your body needs time to regenerate and build new neural pathways. Your career has social and economic inertia. Your reputation, network, current skills, and cash flow all have their own momentum. A decision to switch to a completely new field cannot instantly erase the years you've built in the old one. Your relationships have emotional inertia. Patterns of interaction, unspoken expectations, and shared memories have been formed over many years. Even if you decide to become a better communicator, the other person needs time to notice, trust, and respond to that change. All these factors create the mass of your reality. They have inertia. They are like that giant supertanker. Your consciousness is the rudder. The captain who makes the decision, it arrives at the destination first. But the physical ship, with your entire life as its cargo, needs time to follow. Understanding inertia frees us from impatience. It tells us that the fact that reality hasn't changed yet doesn't mean the rudder hasn't been turned. It simply means the ship is in the process of changing course. But classical physics is only half the story. The other half, the part that offers an inspiring perspective on the immediate power of consciousness, lies in a much stranger world, the quantum world. If physical reality moves slowly because of inertia, a natural question appears: what allows our inner experience to change so quickly? Why can a single insight, a moment of clarity, or a powerful decision seem to transform our perspective almost instantly? Some researchers have proposed that the answer might lie in a bold and still controversial idea that certain aspects of consciousness could involve quantum processes occurring inside the brain. One of the most well-known hypotheses in this area is called orchestrated objective reduction, often abbreviated as ORC-OR. It was proposed by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Their theory suggests that consciousness might not arise solely from the electrical signaling between neurons. Instead, they speculate that deeper processes may occur within microscopic structures inside neurons known as microtubules. Microtubules are tiny cylindrical scaffolds that help maintain the structure of brain cells. According to the ORC-OR hypothesis, these structures might also allow certain quantum-level phenomena to occur. In particular, they could potentially support states of superposition, a strange feature of quantum physics where a system can exist in multiple possible states at the same time until an interaction causes those possibilities to resolve into a single outcome. If this idea is correct, and it remains highly debated, moments of conscious awareness might correspond to events where many possible neural states resolve into one experienced reality. In other words, consciousness could involve a continual process of selecting among possibilities. Now, it's important to pause here and be clear. This theory sits on the frontier of science and is far from universally accepted. Many neuroscientists remain skeptical, and the exact relationship between quantum physics and consciousness is still an open question. But even as a conceptual model, the idea offers something interesting. It helps explain why inner change can feel instantaneous. Your mind can reorganize its interpretation of reality in a single moment. A new understanding can appear suddenly. A belief can collapse. A new identity can emerge almost immediately in your perception. Anyone who has experienced a genuine insight knows this feeling. One moment you see the world one way, then something clicks, and suddenly the same world looks completely different. In that sense, consciousness behaves less like a slow mechanical system and more like a reframing of possibilities. But here is the crucial point. Even if your perception changes instantly, the physical systems of your life do not operate at the same speed. Your brain must still reorganize its neural pathways. Your habits must shift. Your behaviors must repeat often enough to create new patterns. And the external structures of your life relationships, work environments, financial systems, social networks all carry their own inertia. So the moment of insight is not the final step. It is the signal. The real work that follows is the gradual translation of that signal into biological patterns inside the brain. This process is driven by neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repeated thought, emotion, and action. In other words, the insight happens quickly. But the installation of that insight into the physical architecture of your brain takes time. And that is where the apparent lag between consciousness and reality begins. Your awareness moves first. Your biology and eventually your environment slowly reorganize to follow. Your intention has been sent. But for the ship of reality to change course, the rudder must be connected to the engine. And that engine is your brain, through the mechanism of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's extraordinary ability to reorganize itself, forming new neural connections and pruning old ones. Every thought, emotion, and action you take leaves a physical trace in your brain. It's like walking on a grassy field. If you walk back and forth on the same path every day, a trail will form. When you decide to change, you are starting to forge a new path. But the neural highways of old habits have been reinforced for years. They are very wide, and the brain tends to follow them automatically to save energy. So, how long does it take for the brain to catch on to this new intention? The number might surprise you. A famous study in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that, on average, it takes 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. This number ranges from 18 to 254 days, depending on the complexity of the habit and the individual. The 21-day myth is actually an old notion without solid scientific evidence. Another study by Dragansky in 2004 showed that people who learned to juggle for 3 months had a noticeable increase in gray matter in brain areas related to visual and motor perception. This process requires persistent repetition. This is the biological lag, the time required for your brain to build and strengthen new neural pathways. During those 66 days, you will feel a tug of war. There will be days when you easily walk the new path, and days when your brain automatically reverts to the old highway. That is not failure. It is the construction process underway. Furthermore, lifestyle factors act as the construction workers for this process. Quality sleep is when the brain consolidates neural connections. Omega-3 fatty acids are the raw materials for building neuron cell membranes. Exercise increases BDNF protein, which acts as a kind of fertilizer for new neurons. So, the delay is not just due to the inertia of the external world. It is also the necessary delay for your internal world, the physical structure of your brain, to catch up with the intention of your consciousness. So the question becomes practical. If consciousness can change quickly, but reality moves more slowly because of inertia, does that mean we simply have to wait? Not exactly. While we cannot eliminate the natural lag between awareness and physical change, we can influence how efficiently that change unfolds. The key is to understand that transformation happens through consistent signals, not single moments of inspiration. Many people point to a story often associated with this idea, the experience of Dr. Joe Dispenza. In 1986, during a triathlon, Dispenza was struck by a car and reportedly suffered multiple fractures in his spine. Doctors recommended surgery and warned that without it, he might face long-term complications. Dispenza chose a different path. For several weeks, he spent hours each day visualizing the structure of his spine and imagining it healing. According to his own account, he gradually recovered and was eventually able to walk again. Stories like this are often discussed in the context of mind-body influence. Whether one interprets them as extraordinary healing, the result of disciplined focus, or a complex interaction between psychology and biology, they illustrate an important principle. The decision to change can happen instantly, but the body and brain adapt through repetition over time. In other words, insight is the signal, but biology responds to consistent reinforcement. From what we know about neuroscience and behavioral change, several practical steps can help shorten the gap between awareness and external results. The first is consistent daily repetition. When people experience a powerful realization, they often feel motivated to change everything at once. But the brain doesn't rewire itself through intensity alone. It changes through repeated signals. A few quiet minutes each day spent imagining the person you are becoming and allowing your nervous system to feel what that version of you would feel begins to strengthen new neural pathways. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar becomes natural. The second step is to connect intention with small physical action. An intention that remains purely mental rarely creates lasting change. The brain learns most effectively when thought and behavior align. If you've decided to become more confident, take a small action that expresses that confidence, perhaps sending a message you've been hesitating to send or initiating a conversation. If your goal is health, a short walk after visualizing that future can begin anchoring the signal into your physiology. Each action is small, but it tells the brain this is the direction we are moving. A third helpful practice is to track small signs of progress. When change happens slowly, the mind tends to overlook subtle shifts. Keeping a simple weekly journal where you record small pieces of evidence, a calmer reaction in a stressful moment, a new opportunity appearing, a slight improvement in energy helps counter the illusion that nothing is happening. These small data points remind the brain that the system is adjusting. Finally, it's important to provide the biological conditions that allow the brain to adapt. Neuroplasticity requires energy and resources. Sleep is when many neural connections are stabilized and reorganized. Nutrients such as omega-3 fatty acids support the structure of neuronal membranes. Physical movement increases levels of BDNF, a protein that helps support the growth and survival of neurons. These habits may sound simple, but they form the physiological foundation for lasting change. So closing the gap between consciousness and reality is not about forcing the world to move faster. It is about sending clear signals consistently, while allowing the biological and physical systems of life the time they need to respond. And over time, what once felt like a delay often reveals itself as something else entirely. Not resistance, but alignment slowly taking shape. Let's return to the paradox we began with. Imagine once again the image of the supertanker crossing the ocean. Your consciousness is like the captain standing at the helm. At some point, after reflection or insight, The captain decides to change course. The wheel turns. The rudder shifts beneath the water. From the captain's perspective, the decision is immediate and clear. But the ship itself enormous, heavy, carrying thousands of tons of momentum, does not pivot instantly. For a while, it continues moving in the same direction it has always traveled. To an outside observer, nothing seems to have changed. Yet beneath the surface, something important has already happened. The direction of the rudder has changed. The forces acting on the ship have shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the vessel begins tracing a new arc across the water. In many ways, our lives follow a similar pattern. Moments of insight can arrive quickly. A realization about who we are, a decision to let go of an old belief, a quiet understanding that the way we have been living no longer fits the person we are becoming. Inside, the shift can feel immediate. But the physical structures of life habits, relationships, routines, social environments, even the neural pathways inside the brain all carry momentum. They were shaped through repetition over years. And systems shaped slowly rarely reorganize overnight. This is why the delay between awareness and reality often appears, not because the insight was meaningless, but because complex systems take time to reorganize. Your brain is gradually rewiring itself through neuroplasticity. Your behaviors are adjusting. The people around you are responding to subtle changes in how you speak, act, and make decisions. New opportunities begin forming in ways that may not yet be visible. From the inside, it can feel like nothing is happening. But transformation is often quiet in its early stages. Every time you repeat a new thought, the brain strengthens a different neural pathway. Every time you take a small action aligned with your new understanding, the signal becomes a little clearer to your nervous system. Slowly, what once required effort begins to feel natural, and eventually, the external world begins to reorganize around that new pattern. So the gap between consciousness and reality is not necessarily a flaw in the system. It may simply be the time required for awareness to become embodied, the time required for insight to move from a thought into biology, and eventually into lived experience. Which means patience is not passive. Patience is part of the process. It is the space where change stabilizes. If there is one thing to remember, it might be this: when awareness shifts, the direction of the rudder has already changed, even if the horizon still looks the same. The ship is already beginning its turn. And over time, if the signal remains steady, the ocean ahead slowly rearranges itself into a new path. If this idea resonates with you, you might reflect for a moment. Have you ever experienced a period where you felt different inside, but the world around you took time to respond? Moments like that are more common than we think. And sometimes, sharing those experiences can help others understand that they are not stuck. They may simply be in the quiet phase of change. If you enjoy exploring the intersection of consciousness, neuroscience, and the deeper patterns of reality, consider subscribing. This channel is a space where we continue asking these questions together. Thank you for being here.